It's Sunday night and it's 8 p.m. here in Charleston, South Carolina, so it must be time for the Bible Forum. This is Warren Sprouse. We're here every Sunday night solving all the world's problems in 2 hours or less. I had someone who commented this week, Facebook, I think, or something like that, said, "Why does it take you 2 hours?" Well, it used to take 3 hours. Trying to think if it ever took 4. I don't think so. I did an hour when I started back in the good old days. The year January 2000 is when I began this process. And then it skipped to 2 hours a week. And then we moved to another radio station in Wilmington, North Carolina, and it jumped up to 3 hours. And then when it went to the video idea, it had to drop back to 2 hours. Because if you're doing radio for 3 hours, you're not talking for 2, because there's commercials every 20 minutes or so, and there's 6 minutes at the top and 6 minutes at the bottom and all the rest of it. And when I switched over to doing just the video portion, I realized that after about 2 hours talking, I couldn't go any further. It's just no break. You can't go to the bathroom. There's nothing you can do. The only thing I can do is stare at you while you stare back at me. You can also get into the chat room. There's some folks in the chat room right now. If you'd like to be a part of that, jump over there. They would love to talk to you. I get to talk to you periodically, but you see, if I'm doing that, then I can't do this, and it gets a little confusing. But we do this every Sunday night. Did you get the email this week? This is what the email looked like if you got it. You see my face? It's always like that. The part that changes is the pictures that are at the bottom. Of course, they print out on the top of the next page. And it gives you a rundown of the things that you can expect. If you'd like to have that email, you need to send me a little note saying so, an email note. And then I'll have your address, and I'll stick it in there. I'm not going to try to sell you anything except my book. I'm not going to harass you, and I'm not going to sell yours to anybody else. You'll get one of these each week just to let you know what's going on. This week we're going to talk about a transgender Baptist preacher. You didn't think there was such a one. We're going to talk a little bit about volcanoes and earthquakes. Oh my. About a body possession epidemic in Malaysia. That's what they're calling it. We have a little different name that we give to it. We're going to talk about the age of dinosaurs, a little bit about hermeneutics. Today we have faith over hermeneutics. In the old days, we had a faith rooted in our hermeneutic. We've abandoned that in favor of whatever we trust, whatever we think is right, good, and also we're going to talk about that a little bit. Obama was out on the trail this week. He was over in Saudi Arabia, over in Great Britain. He's been other places. I guess he's coming home. But he made an observation early in the week that he thought that Israel was the one who was escalating the violence relative to their little country. I thought that was interesting. And I put a little question on my website this week about your gas prices. Just curious. I don't know what your gas prices are. They're running about $1.89 here in our area, in Charleston County. I know they're more expensive in other places. They're about 20 cents more in North Carolina, because I used to see the difference when I went back and forth. But in 2012, 2014, I forget when it was now. No, I guess it was in 2015, early in 2015. Crude oil was running at about $1.25 a barrel. Do you remember what you were paying for gas the last half of last year? Or toward the end of it, in the beginning of this year? Well, today crude oil is trading at $45 a barrel. And your gas prices are $2.12 on average around the country. When it was running to 125, the gas price average in the country was $2.40. $125 a barrel, $2.40. $45 a barrel, about a third, and it's $2.12. Anybody smell a rat? Come on. This is a socialist country. We control these things, don't we? I don't know who it is that's doing that. We think it's the gas companies, but we have a government. And if the gas company is gouging us this badly, the government ought to step in and stop it, don't you think? Why don't they? Oh, well. We're going to be talking about all of these and more as the evening progresses. We are knee-deep in the Satanic High Holy Days. I talked to you about that last week. Began on the 19th of April. It's going to run for 7 or 8, 10 days, whatever it is. You can go back into the archives. You can go back, check the Facebook page. You can check the YouTube page. You can check where you are now. You are watching on my website, but that's being given to the website by Ustream.tv. Some of you actually click where it says Ustream Live. You click that and it takes you to our Ustream website. And down on the right-hand side, you can see all the stuff from yesterday and the day before and last week and last month. And if you click over there and go there, it go for 2 years. So you can go back and you can check out some of this stuff, all of the Black Sabbaths, the sacrifices, and all of that kind of thing. If you're not engaged, you need to get engaged in the Bible form. Do you have my books? I have 2 books. Do you have my books? Well, if you don't have them, you're missing stuff. Do you have a shirt? You need to have a shirt. Everywhere I go with this shirt, people say, what's that? You get a chance to explain that. Some of you have a shirt. If you bought my first book, I gave you a shirt, I believe. Some of you actually bought your shirts. $25. You let me know your size. I'll send it to you, black or gray. It helps the ministry. Anyway, you need to get all that fixed before next Sunday rolls around. The Bible Institute is moving along. I'm working on biblical anthropology right now. There is the anthropology that explains the physiology of the human anatomy, but this is a biblical anthropology. So it gets into who we are as God has made us to be, our makeup, both physically and emotionally. It gets into the spiritual aspect of it, all of that sort of thing. So if you're engaged with the Bible Institute, you're going to get that. It's lesson 5, I believe. Some of you are still working on 2. Some of you are on 3. But you will get into this. You need to sign up if you haven't already. You can go to the website, BibleInstituteofCharleston.org, and click around. There's samples. Actually, I updated the sample to a different subject. There's about 15 minutes of something else. If you were used to watching it, I think it was on the doctrine of God. I think this one's on angelology/demonology. There's also an introductory short little YouTube that explains how it all works. And you go over there and rummage around a little bit and see what you can come up with. You need to sign up. You need to subscribe to the website, to the BibleForum.net. When I write the blogs, they'll come to you. You need to subscribe to the other websites, livinggodly.net, tribiblicalcounseling.net, theviewfromzoar.com, and they will send you stuff. Every time I write something, you will get it. I wrote the other week about child abuse in the millennium. I wrote this week about volcanoes, earthquakes, and God. So if you are one who gets that, you already know all this stuff. I don't have to tell you. But most of you don't, because it tells me when people subscribe, and not a whole bunch of you are subscribing. And then I get questions. Somebody will write to me and ask me a question, something that I just talked about last week, or something that is on a blog. You know, it's just one of those things. I'm not upset. It's okay. I don't mind answering the question. I love to hear from people. Write to me at the Bible Forum, thebibleforum@gmail.com. Or you can call me here on the show, 843-732-0249. Did you notice this week? I guess if you were living on, what will they say, in a van down by the river, you might have missed it. Or maybe if you were on another planet, but Prince died. Musician. That was his first name, Prince. We've had him in and out of our life for the last 30 or 40 years. He was 57 years old. Rock and roll, they call it, pop, soul, R&B icon. It recorded for us that his life and career were often shrouded in mystery. At one time, he used a symbol instead of his name. And then we started calling him the artist formerly known as Prince. And he was kind of cagey about his sexuality. He didn't want you to know too much. When he died, we found out that he changed his name to something you couldn't pronounce to try to get out of a contract with Warner Records or somebody like that. Didn't work, but once that contract expired, he went back to Prince. Prince Rogers Nelson. We found out just recently that he probably died of an overdose. Not that he was doing street drugs or anything like that, but apparently, according to the fellow who was selling him about $100,000 of drugs a year, he was scared to death to go on stage. So he would take stuff to kind of hype him up. And then, of course, after some period of time, you had to take something to calm it down. You go back and forth. And people are speculating because prior to his death, the airplane he was on coming home had to stop in Illinois. He was put in a hospital. There wasn't a private room, so he didn't stay. But we learned here lately that the doctors there gave him a shot they call the life-saving shot. This is some kind of a boost that they give people. If they don't give it to them, they're going to die. So it's clearly an upper of some kind. And then he got back on the plane and went home, and about 4 or 5 days later, they found him dead. This is what happens to people who get involved in this kind of a lifestyle and can't really keep it up. It's damaging on just about every level. Elvis was taking the same drugs that he was taking. He loved them. Records indicate that he grew up a Seventh-day Adventist. We were told that as a child he often suffered epileptic seizures. And one day he told his mother he wasn't going to have them anymore. She asked why, and he said, because an angel told me so. As an adult, he became a Jehovah's Witness. In 2001, after 2 years of consideration, Prince bought in to Jehovah's Witnesses. In an interview with the New Yorker, he said, I don't see it really as a conversion. More, it's a realization. It's like Morpheus and Neo in the Matrix. Some of us have no idea what that means. Prince also went door to door with the witnesses. He would knock on doors with their literature, as you all have experienced. In 2003, in Minneapolis, a newspaper carried a story about a couple who answered the door only to find Prince, offering them a copy of The Watchtower. He said, though they were Orthodox Jews, and it was Yom Kippur, they were also Prince fans, so they invited him in. And he sat there for about 20 minutes, told them the story, laid it all out, and went to his next stop. They also indicated that Prince's songs were sometimes mini sermons. In 2013, the writer Torre wrote, quote, I would die for you, why Prince became an icon. And in this tome, article, whatever it is, he explored the Christianity he found at the root of much of Prince's music. The amount of discussion of sex is this much, and I'm assuming he put his fingers up and said this much during an interview with The Observer, and the amount of discussion of religion and spirituality and God and Jesus is this much. And whatever the discussion of sex was bigger than the discussion of God and Jesus. In the book, Prince's guitarist Des Dickerson described Prince as a guy who really is thoughtful, introspective, and holds religious considerations close to his heart, and ponders those questions sincerely and genuinely and deeply. He was an original in music. He was also an original in his thinking. In an undated interview with the letter V, magazine, Vanessa Grigoriadis discussed with Prince some of his thoughts. She said it was reluctantly, but he discussed the relationship between his sometimes racy lyrics and his faith, saying, "We are sensual beings, the way God created us, when you take the shame and the taboo away from it." And then he went on to describe religion as like a force, an electromagnetic one, or like gravity that puts things in motion. The things Prince put in motion in music and beyond are probably going to outlast anything you or I ever say and or do. This is where we are, and this is where human beings are, when they do not grasp what God is all about. And I don't know how many times I have to tell you this, but the Bible points out very clearly, and here is an illustration of it. No man seeks after God. It isn't that they aren't looking for God, but they're not looking for the God of the Bible. They're not looking for the God of the universe. They're looking for a God of their own manufacture. There isn't anything in a human being that wants the God of the Bible or takes any time to try to find him, because it's not possible. If God does not move in your life, Jesus characterized it as the wind that blew. A man does not know where that wind's coming from, he told Nicodemus, and he has no idea where it's going. But when it comes, it does a work in your heart. Jesus characterized it as being born again. That's not salvation, but it's an awakening. Now you can understand. But until that happens, you never will. Here's Prince, who wanted to know. And there are numerous other people we've run into over the years who wanted to know, but they never really comprehended. And I'm sad to report that I believe that this man died without Christ. Friday, 2 days ago, was Earth Day. I don't know if you pay a whole lot of attention to Earth Day. I do not. At a time when the progressives are running around yelling that the sky is falling, it's refreshing to know that there's someone out there, someone who's knowledgeable, someone who agrees with the folks. You know, those of us who don't really know a whole lot about science, but we can see, we can think, we can feel, we can read. People who aren't beholden to one particular philosophy, scientific or otherwise, or another. People who have no dog in the fight. You do know some folks have made millions off of this global warming boondoggle. You also know some folks have lost their shirt, believing what some of these people have said. And the winters are still cold, and the summers are still hot. And they're still ranging within the 100-year or whatever range that people have been keeping records. And the longer this thing goes, the more data creeps out to the uninitiated, that throws the fearmongers for a loop. John Coleman, Dr. John Coleman, was the founder of the Weather Channel. You've heard about him. A number of years ago, he came out against global warming, and he got fired from his own Weather Channel. You can't take the wrong opinion with these people. Well, John has written a piece for Earth Day. On this Earth Day, he writes, there was a great deal of frenzy about how our Earth is going to become uninhabitable as the civilized activities of man allegedly trigger unstoppable global warming and climate change. With the Obama administration signing our nation onto the Paris Climate Agreement just on Earth Day, it's obvious that science has taken a back seat there at the United Nations. The environmentalists, bureaucrats, and politicians who make up the UN's climate panel recruit scientists to research the climate issue, and they place only those people who will produce the desired results on such committees. Money, politics, ideology have completely replaced science. When all the scare, he writes, is pushed aside, it's the science that should be the basis for this debate. And the hard, cold truth is that basic theory has failed. Many notable scientists reject man-made global fears, and several of them, including a Nobel Prize winner, are in the new Climate Hustle movie. The film is an informative and even humorous new feature-length movie that is the ultimate answer to Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth. It's going to be shown one day, just for one day, only in certain theaters on May 2nd. Look for it somewhere near you. Have you studied the age of dinosaurs? Have you been involved in any level in school or watching the news where people have come along and told you that these things are millions and millions, tens of millions of years old? Do you realize the Bible talks about them? Writes about them in Job at a time when they were visible. He was talking about things he'd seen. I don't want to upset you. Well, now there's this bone, and this is a new article that I ran across this week, but I think it is really something older. But they have found a bone in Montana, and they believe that it contains DNA. The story is dated March 2016. The researchers are at North Carolina State University and North Carolina Museum of Natural Science. And they're talking about something called a medullary bone. The medullary bone apparently is female specific, and it is formed sometime around the time of reproduction. And they think that it's possible that DNA might be present in that bone. Are you doing the math? Researcher Lindsay Zano says, quote, "We have some evidence that fragments of DNA may be preserved in dinosaur fossils, but this remains to be tested further." The dinosaur has been dated to be allegedly 68 million years old, which would mean that this incredibly flimsy genetic material called DNA has a very short lifespan. And that they would think it could be here just blows their science right out of the park on two levels. On the length of time it takes for DNA to dissipate and the age of this dinosaur. If there is DNA material in this dinosaur fossil, it's got to prove that they aren't millions of years old. But don't wait for committed evolutionists to buy into that any day soon. The author of this article said it's like a man who was taken to a psychiatrist by his family because he was convinced he was dead. And so he sat down with the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said to him, "So, you're dead?" And the man said, "Yes." The psychiatrist said, "Do dead men bleed?" The man said, "No." And so the psychiatrist went and got a needle and he pricked the man's hand so that it began to bleed. And he says, "What do you think now?" And the man looked down at the blood and said, "Oh my goodness, look at that. Dead men do bleed."